Good morning, Rock Church. If you don't know me, my name is Clay, and I'm one of the pastors here on staff. And I am so excited that you are here with us today, whether you are in person or online. Thank you for joining us. It's going to be a phenomenal day as we continue our series called The Key. Now, because we're talking about this idea of the key, what I want to do is actually kind of give you some keys for today, some great things that might be helpful for you. First of all, if you're new here, if you're in person, swing by the New Here tent after services. We'd love to connect with you. But if you're new and you're watching online or you're at C3, check in with the host there. We'd love to connect with you there as well. Another key thing for you to know about is Quest. Quest is something we've been doing for the month of January, and we're going to continue doing it throughout the whole year. It's a week-by-week devotion. We're giving out free copies in the lobby. We should still have some left. If we don't, we'll have some in soon. So go ahead, check that out. You're not too late to jump in. We start week 4 tomorrow, and it's not done in a way where you have to do the first 3 weeks to get to the 4th week and just start with week 4 right there with us. And we'd love for you guys to join in with that. Another thing I want you guys to know about is a father-son Lego event that's happening next week. And if you're a father to a young boy, this is a great way for you to invest in your child and get some spiritual time while also having a lot of fun. And if you're a father-like figure to someone, it's a great way for you to bring them into your life even further. So go ahead and bring them as well. So check that out on the app. Find out all information there. And then the last thing on the app is walkthrough. Next Sunday after the 11:30, this service, we will be having walkthrough, which is where you can figure out how you fit into the game plan of the Rock, where you can use your skills, your abilities, and your passions to make a difference, because that's what God has called all of us to do. I hope you guys are having a great day so far. I hope the morning's been awesome, and I'm really excited for this service. So if you guys just hang back, we'll get started in just 1 minute. Thanks, guys.
Good morning, Rock Church. We are so glad you guys are here with us on this cold, cold morning. Let's stand and jump into a time of worship and light this place on fire with that worship. Amen? Come on.
Praise arise. come together, strange as neighbors, our blood is one, and children of generations, of every nation, of kingdom come. So don't let your heart be troubled. Hold your head up high, don't fear no evil. Fix your eyes on this one truth. God is madly in love with you. So take courage, hold on, be strong. Remember where our help comes from. It's in his blood, and Jesus, light of heaven, friend forever, his kingdom come. So don't let your heart be troubled. Hold your head up high, don't fear the evil. Fix your eyes on this one truth. God is madly in love with you. So take courage, hold on, be strong. Remember where our help comes from. Oh, 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 here we go, swing wide. Swing wide, all you heavens. Let the praise go up as the walls come down. All creation, everything with breath, repeat the sound. All his children, clean hands, pure hearts, good grace, good God. His name is Jesus. Swing wide, all you heavens. Let the praise go up as the walls come down. All creation.
proclaimed its victory. The King of love had given up his life. The darkest day in history. There on the cross they made for sinners. For every curse his blood atoned. When final breath and it was finished. And not the end we could have known. For the earth began to shake. And the veil was torn. What sacrifice was made as the heavens roared. Oh, hail King Jesus. Oh, hail the Lord of heaven and earth. Oh, hail King Jesus. Oh, hail the Savior worthy today, yes. You're worthy of it all. He's worthy. You're worthy of it all. And we praise you today, God, for from you are all things, and to you are all things. You deserve the glory. Sing it out to him today. You're worthy of it all. Yeah, you're worthy of it all. Yes, we see you here today, God. For from you are all things, and to you are all things. You deserve the glory. Yeah, give him all the praise now. You're worthy of it all. You're worthy of it all. For from you are all things, and to you are all things. You deserve the glory. One more time, yeah. You're worthy of it all. You're worthy of it all. God, you're worthy. For from you are all things, and to you are all things. You deserve the glory. Yes, he's worthy. Yes, you're worthy of it all. You're worthy of it all, God. Yes. For from you are all things, to you are all things. You deserve the glory. You're worthy of it all. You're worthy of it all. All the praise, all the glory. For from you are all things, and to you are all things. You deserve the glory.
Jesus, we lift your name right now because you are worthy. You are worthy of all things right now, Jesus. And Jesus, I'm so thankful that you are here. You're not just sitting here as a like one little corner or with one person. Jesus, you are filling this space with your presence. And we worship you because you are an audience of one. We are hundreds of people gathering, just celebrating the audience of one, that you are the audience that we are giving glory to right now. We acknowledge you, we celebrate you, we enjoy you, we praise you. We welcome you, we glorify you. In your name. Amen. He's worthy, isn't he? Is he worthy of praise? I mean, come on. Right? We are here today to glorify Jesus and to connect with him. That's it. That is the goal every time we gather, is just to welcome the presence of Jesus. And aren't you glad that he shows up? That he welcomes it and that he shows up and that he is a part of this. And man, I hope that we all recognize that. Maybe you're new with us, maybe your first time either at the Rock or maybe your first time ever at church. I hope you realize today that what we are doing is more than just walking into a building and listening to some music or to somebody communicate. What we are doing is we are welcoming the presence of Jesus, and we are acknowledging him. That's what it's all about. That's what it's all about here. That's what it's all about online. And that's what it's all about at our Coastal campus. Would you guys do me a favor right now? And would you welcome online and those people who are at Coastal with us right now? That we get an opportunity together to connect. And I want to talk to not just those of you in Conway, but obviously those of you online, maybe on demand later, or those of you at our coastal campus. And I want to ask us just one question today. Just one simple question that is going to get us rolling throughout the rest of the message. All right? And here's the question. How good are you at showing mercy? I want you to think about that for a second. How good are you at showing mercy, forgiveness, compassion to others? And just confession, how many of you all would admit with me that we're just not very good at it? Anybody with me? Some of you are with me? Like I'm just not very good at it. That although I need to be, because Jesus says that the key to a happy, blessed, favored, fortunate life is mercy and the showing of it, the giving of it. See, we're in a series right now that we're calling The Key. And as part of this series, we've been going through what we in the church often call the Beatitudes. It was part of a sermon that Jesus preached, and he said, if you want to be blessed, favored, fortunate, or happy, this is what you need to do. And we've kind of dug into that. I'm gonna kind of, just for review, let us kind of read back through these scriptures that we've been studying for 3 weeks. I'm gonna come back here to the screen just so those of you online and at Coastal can see it a little bit easier. But here's what it says. Matthew chapter 5, verse 3 says, God blesses those who are poor and realize their need for him. For the kingdom of heaven is theirs. All right? So God says, if you're poor, you're blessed. Let me keep reading. It says, God blesses those who mourn, for they will be comforted. That God blesses those who are poor and those who mourn. So if you are poor and you are sad, then God says that you can be blessed, happy, favored, and fortunate. Let me keep reading. Last week we said this, that God blesses those who are humble, for they will inherit the whole earth. That God blesses those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be satisfied. That we said that if you're humble and hungry. And then today I want us to look at it this way. It says, God blesses those who are merciful, for they will be shown mercy. So if you want to be blessed, favored, fortunate, or happy, then we need to be merciful. So maybe I should ask this, what is mercy? Like, what's the definition of mercy? And the definition of mercy is this: it's compassion or forgiveness shown towards someone who it is within your power to punish or harm. That if you show compassion or forgiveness to somebody that you would have the power to punish or harm, that is actually showing mercy. Mercy is offering forgiveness when you want to give justice. And mercy is offering compassion when you want to give justice. Mercy isn't always the easiest to give. So let me ask again, how good are you at showing mercy? And my guess is, if we really look at it in realms of that, the majority of us would say, well, I'm not very good. Now, here's what I know about mercy. We all want it, don't we? Well, like anytime we've done something wrong, anytime we've messed up, we all want mercy in those situations. When we think that something might be difficult, we ask for mercy in those moments. I'll prove it to you. That for those of you who are in school, now if you show up to school tomorrow and the teacher says, hey, we're having a pop quiz, you will immediately ask for mercy. You'll be like, is it open book? right? Like when you take a test and you know you didn't do good on the test, you'll immediately ask the teacher, hey, is there any extra credit or are you willing to grade on a curve? Because you want mercy. That when a paper is due and you're looking at the professor and you didn't get it done in time, you'll often say, hey, is there any way I can turn it in tomorrow? Because you want mercy. Some of you asked for mercy already today. It happened when the alarm clock went off and you said, mercy, and you hit the snooze button. Some of you maybe asked for mercy this week because you own a piece of property and you realized that your property taxes were due and you weren't ready for them. And so now you're asking the government, hey, can I have some mercy on my property taxes? Or maybe when the bill collector calls and says you're late on your bill, we're going to charge you an extra $29. You'll often say, oh, I'll pay that now, but is there any way you can pull that $29 fee off there? I want mercy. Or maybe I haven't hit you yet. How about I can hit you this way? How many times when you see those little lights of a police officer in your rearview mirror do you ask for mercy? Are you with me now? Right? Because that officer will always walk up to your car and they will always ask the exact same question. They'll say, do you know why I pulled you over? And what do you say? Well, I don't know. Like your comment, your reply is, maybe I was speeding. Like, can I get a warning? You ask for mercy in those moments. Or how about this? How many of y'all have ever said something that you really regretted? Come on, be honest, right? And how many times when you said it, you realized, I shouldn't have said that, and now I need mercy? I remember that one time in my marriage. Well, I actually remember it a lot of times in my marriage. But one time was worse than ever before. Like the worst thing that I ever said to my wife was 27 years ago. And what had happened is she had just given birth to Clay. He's a little, newborn at home. And we're trying to figure that out. And then all of a sudden she's like, I'm dealing with some emotions. I got this stuff. Like, can I just go get my hair cut? I was like, yeah, absolutely. You go get your hair cut and everything will be fine. We'll take care of the kids. We got all that covered. And she goes, I think I'm going to cut it a little bit shorter than normal. Okay, I don't care. It's your hair. Do what you want, okay? And she leaves and she goes and cuts her hair, and I've got Clay probably in a little walker, a little, one of those little carriers, whatever. And I'm down in the church basement because at that point in my life, we lived in the attic of the church. It's called a parsonage for a youth pastor, okay? But anyway, long story, I won't go there. But I'm down in the basement of the church, hanging out with Clay, and then all of a sudden she shows up. And when she shows up, she's kind of off in the distance and I can barely see her, but I can tell it's Krista. And I go, is that a wig? And in that moment, I knew I messed up. Ladies, would you agree I messed up? Yeah, I'm in big trouble. Guess what I asked for? Mercy. Guess what she gave? Justice. Because what she did is she started crying, she turned around, and she walked out. And she went up to our apartment and long story, okay? But bottom line is in that moment, I desperately needed mercy. And she wanted to give justice. And I believe that shows where we really are in life. Is that when we do something that is wrong, when we do something that is offensive, when we mess up, when we break the law, what we desperately desire is mercy. We ask for mercy. We say, please give us mercy. But the minute that something is done to us that is wrong, we want justice. That if somebody cuts you off on the road, you want justice. That if somebody comes speeding by you real fast, you often think, well, maybe there's a police officer over there that'll pull him over. And when you see it actually happen, you're like, ha ha. If it was you, you'd want mercy, but because it's them, you want justice. When somebody gossips about you, you want justice. When somebody offends you, you want justice. When somebody says something about you on the internet, you want justice. I do as well. I am guilty of this. I am not preaching this as if I've got it all figured out. I'm saying that it is a constant battle in our lives over, I want mercy when I mess up, but I want justice when somebody else did. But what does Jesus say? Matthew 5. He said, "Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy." Which means when somebody hurts you, offends you, upsets you, is mean to you, is gossips about you, stabs you in the back, whatever it might mean, that in those moments, Jesus says, give mercy. And to that, most of us would say, okay, but how many times do I have to do it? Right? Like, okay, Jesus, you're telling me I need to forgive, I need to show compassion, I need to give mercy, but how many times do I need to forgive? And how many times do I need to give mercy? And how many times do I need to give compassion? Because there's a limit to what I can give. Because to give mercy is going to cost me something. To give justice, that's what I want because I want my pound of flesh. I want justice because I want revenge. To give mercy means I got to give up justice. So how many times do I have to do that? And I don't think that's just a question that we ask. It's a question that they asked. There was an apostle, his name was Peter. He was a follower of Jesus. He was alive during the times of Jesus. And he was a guy who helped establish the church. And what Peter did is he probably heard, I shouldn't say probably, he heard Jesus speak this message of forgiveness. He heard Jesus speak this message of mercy. And at some point along the journey, Peter went to Jesus and said, okay, like I've heard you saying we need to forgive. I've heard you saying we need to be merciful. So he ends up asking Jesus a question about, well, how often do I need to do that? And I'm going to read it for you. It's from Matthew chapter 18. It reads like this. It says, then Peter came to him, meaning Jesus, and asked, Lord, how often should I forgive someone who sins against me? It's a good question. Probably a question that many of us have asked. And then Peter answers his own question. Peter ends up saying to Jesus, 7 times? Like, why would Peter say that? Like Peter asked the question, how many times do I need to forgive them? And then he ends up answering it, well, 7 times. And here's what I think. That I think when Peter asked the question, he knew, well, I've got to forgive them more than once. But he didn't bring up what was called the rabbinic law. See, the rabbinic law would say that you would forgive people 3 times, meaning the rabbis taught you would forgive somebody 3 times if they did something against you. And honestly, that's how we still live today, right? Like if somebody messes up, you say 3 strikes and you're out, right? Like that's how we kind of function today. Now we still kind of practically live by this rabbinic law where we say, hey, you mess up once, I get it. 2nd time, it's going to be difficult. 3rd time, you're out. I get it. So Peter, he tries to one-up that. And I imagine that he's thinking, okay, I'm going to show Jesus I really know the answer. He says, how about this, Jesus? Like 7 times? Like I've doubled the normal of what we should do. So 7 times, that's probably the right answer, right, Jesus? And Jesus says no. Jesus replies and he says this, no, not 7 times, Jesus replied, but 70 times 7. Think about this, that Jesus says 7's not enough. Yet pretty much all of us in this room, myself included, would say, if I have to forgive somebody 7 times, like that's enough. What Jesus says is no, not 7 times. He says 70 times 7. How in the world? Like, Jesus, what does that even mean? And here's what Jesus is actually saying there. He's saying, forgive them to completion, perfection, and through infinity. Like, he's basically saying, you've got to just completely forgive all the time. You have to be willing to show mercy. And I know, if you're like me, when you hear that, you go, how is that even possible? Am I right? Like, how is that even possible? Well, that's the question I want us to deal with right now. Like, the first question is, how good are you at showing mercy? The second question would be is, well, then how can I actually do that? How can I actually show mercy? How can I actually fulfill what Jesus said? And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to continue talking about it online and here in Conway, and I'm going to ask Peyton to take over at Coastal. How do we do that? Like, let's be real. How do we forgive 70 times 7? Like, Jesus, how do you even ask that? Well, fortunately for us, what Jesus does is he helps explain it. Because when you hear that big number, you'll probably be like, I don't know if I can do this. But Jesus says, here's how you do it. And he ends up telling Peter and everybody else who was there a parable. Now, a parable is just a story, okay? We often in the church world, we like to say it's a story with a heavenly meaning. And what Jesus did is he told them this story. And the story goes like this. It's in Matthew 18. You can read it on your own. It goes like this. It says that Jesus said this. He said, there once was a king who wanted to settle his accounts. That he wanted to settle his accounts with the servants who owed him money. So what he ended up doing is he brought in his servants, and he brought in this one who owed him millions of dollars, okay? Like lots and lots and lots of money. And he looked at the servant, and he said, you owe me millions of dollars. I need you to pay it. And the servant said, I can't pay it. And so the ruler, the king said, well, sell the man, his wife, and his kids, and everything he owns, and take the proceeds and give to me to pay off his debt. Well, immediately, this servant fell to his knees, and he begged for mercy from the king. He said, King, please forgive me. I can't pay it. Please, 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 please. And the king, as an act of mercy, said, I will forgive you of everything that you've done. You can leave. And the servant got to leave. And when the servant left, he went out to where the other people were hanging out, and he saw somebody else, a fellow worker, a fellow servant, who owed him maybe about $1,000. And when he saw the man, he said, you owe me $1,000. I need you to pay it immediately. And that servant said to the servant who had been forgiven, he said, I'm sorry, I don't have the money right now. Give me some time and I'll pay it back. But the man who had been forgiven of a lot wouldn't have it. So he said to the servant, no, and he sent him to prison so that he could pay back his debt. Well, when the other people heard this, they're like, hey, king, the one you forgave all the debt of, he ended up throwing somebody in jail for a little bit of money. And this enraged the king. And this is what it says the king said next in the parable. It says, then the king called in the man he had forgiven and said, you evil servant, I forgave you that tremendous debt because you pleaded with me. Shouldn't you have had mercy on your fellow servant, just as I had mercy on you? Then the angry king sent the man to prison to be tortured until he could pay his debt in entirety. That the one who had been forgiven of everything was unwilling to forgive somebody else of a little thing. So the king said, you should have forgiven him. You should have recognized everything you had been forgiven of, and then it would have been real easy for you to offer forgiveness as well. And that's the key for us. How do we forgive somebody 70 times 7? How do we be merciful? How do we show compassion? How do we offer forgiveness? Well, we first come to a good understanding of the inexcusable debt amount we owe to God. right? Because it's inexcusable. If you think about how much we have hurt God, offended God, sinned against God, yet God, in his grace and in his mercy, wipes our slate clean. And if we come to an understanding of that inexcusable debt, then we maybe would be able to forgive others as well. See, the unmerciful servant, he didn't look at his own debt load. Yeah, he got busted. When the king told him, hey, I need you to pay back your debts, and he's like, I couldn't, he wasn't sorrowful, he was sorry. And he begged for mercy, not from a place of sorrow, but just as a way to get out of the situation. And when he got freed, he didn't acknowledge the incredible amount of debt that he was forgiven. And I think that's where we are guilty, is that we forget the inexcusable debt load that we actually have to God. C.S. Lewis, who's a very popular author, he said it this way: to be Christian means to forgive the inexcusable because God has forgiven the inexcusable in you. I want to say that again. To be Christian is to forgive the inexcusable because God has forgiven the inexcusable in me. And when I come to understand the fact that I have been forgiven, then I can understand how to forgive others. Now, that forgiveness means that we've went to God and we've asked for it. Or maybe another way for me to say it is that forgiveness is found in a pure heart. Let me go back to the Beatitudes. Matthew chapter 5, verse 7. Remember, it read like this: God blesses those who are merciful, for they will be shown mercy. God blesses those whose hearts are pure, for they will see God. That I want you to see that these two are in sync with one another. And here's what I mean by that, is that we're only able to show mercy when we understand our inexcusable debt load to God, and when we understand our inexcusable debt load to God and ask him for forgiveness, then he purifies and transforms our heart. And when we have a pure heart that is transformed with him, it is only then that we'll be able to offer that same kind of mercy to others. Because on my own, never. Right? Like, if I don't have a transformed heart, a pure heart from God, man, I'm not going to forgive somebody. Maybe once, maybe twice, not 3 times. Or maybe I could say it this way: I might forgive somebody who cut me off. I might forgive somebody who gossiped about me. I might forgive somebody who talked junk about me online. But I'm not going to forgive the person who hurt my kids or my spouse. I'm not going to forgive the person who maybe caused abuse. Right? You see what I'm getting at? Like, without a transformed heart, we might forgive somebody of the little things, but to forgive them of murder? No. Forgive them of robbing you of your innocence? No chance. Forgive them of the abuse that they've done to you, maybe verbally or physically? Not on your life. To forgive how you've hurt my family? I don't think so. We're not going to offer that kind of forgiveness unless there's a transformed heart. And a transformed heart, it happens when we go to Jesus and we recognize our inexcusable sin, and we say, Jesus, I need you to come into my heart. I need you to forgive me of what I have done. And when I find forgiveness in my heart, then I'm able to live and act like Jesus does. Or maybe I can say it this way. Maybe it's then I can have the same attitude of Christ and the same actions of Christ. Because Jesus' attitude towards us is that he cares about our soul, not our sin. I don't know if you understand that about Jesus. That when Jesus sees you, he sees your soul, not your sin. That when he saw the adulterous woman, he saw her soul. When he saw his disciples fail him, he saw their soul. When he saw the sinners and the tax collectors and the prostitutes, he saw their soul. Now, he understood their sin. Jesus didn't excuse their sin, just like he won't excuse our sin. That he'll never say, well, sin's not a big deal. No, sin is a big deal, but he'll look through your sin to your soul, because what Jesus cares about is saving us. That's the reason John 3:16 and 17 says that God so loved the world, he sent his son, that whoever believes in him won't perish, but will have everlasting life. For God didn't send his son into the world to condemn the world, but to save the world. Meaning that Jesus comes after our soul. And we need to do the same. We need to look at people and rather than see their sin, see their soul. And we'll only be able to do that is if our heart has been transformed by Jesus. Outside of that, no chance. I can tell you this, for me, no chance if my heart's not transformed. Because I'm going to want justice, not mercy. But if I have the attitude of Christ, then I can follow the actions of Christ. And what do the actions of Christ look like? Jesus washing the feet of Judas a couple hours before Judas betrayed him for some silver. Jesus washing the feet of Peter just hours before Peter denied him. Jesus sitting on a beach with Peter, restoring him and saying, I care about you. Jesus in front of Pilate when Pilate says that don't you realize I have the power to kill you? And Jesus says, the only power you have is that which I've given you. That the actions of Jesus are all based on mercy. And when we start to see Jesus and try to live out his attitude and his actions because he has transformed our heart, then we might actually be able to forgive people. Then we might actually be able to give compassion to people. That when we recognize our inexcusable debt load to God and we allow it to be cleansed by God and receive the mercy of God, then maybe we can offer mercy. We can offer mercy to the person who's gossiped. We can offer mercy to the neighbor who's not being neighborly. We can offer mercy to the family member who has left us. We can also offer mercy to the friend who has been hurting us. We can offer mercy to the person who abused us. And I know that's difficult, but it is possible. I was talking to one of the guys from our church. He's at one of our other campuses, but he was just telling me last week that my dad was very abusive. But through Christ, I learned the only way for me to live was to forgive. I think about a U.S. gymnast who her testimony was recorded of a courtroom scene of when her coach, who had sexually molested her, was on trial. And she offered forgiveness to him. I think about a guy named Chris Lapel. Chris is a missionary to Cambodia. And there's a documentary that one of our mission partners put out about Chris. And in it, what you see in Chris's life is that he was in Cambodia sharing the gospel. And there was a guy sitting in his circle hearing about Jesus. And the guy who was sitting in the circle was the man who had killed Chris's mom and dad years earlier. And Chris, through the power of God and through a pure heart, shared the gospel with that man. And that man came to know the Lord as his Savior. And his sins were washed away. And now that man and Chris went out on evangelistic missions together. How do you do that? Only through a transformed heart that is made pure because of the mercy of God. That's the only way. It's the only way. But when you understand your inexcusable debt load to God and the fact that he can wash it clean, then it makes sense to give it to others. And when you start to have that transformed heart, that pure heart, you can start to see people not for their sin, but for their soul and how desperately they need Jesus. Makes me think about a teenage girl named Shelby Houston. And I don't know if you've heard Shelby's testimony or seen her video, but it went viral back in December. That Shelby, as an 18-year-old student, her dad, who's a police officer, was killed in the line of duty. And Shelby spoke at her dad's funeral. And what she said can only come through somebody who understands their debt load to God and how everybody, including themselves, needs Jesus. Why don't you watch just a little bit of her testimony?
I remember having conversations with my dad about him losing friends and officers in the line of duty. I have heard all the stories you can think of, but I've always had such a hard time with how the suspect is dealt with. Not that I didn't think there should be justice served, but my heart always ached for those who don't know Jesus. Their actions being a reflection of that. I was always told that I would feel differently if it happened to me, but as it's happened to my own father, I think I still feel the same. There has been anger, sadness, grief, and confusion, and part of me wishes I could despise the man who did this to my father, but I can't get any part of my heart to hate him. All that I can find is myself hoping and praying for this man to truly know Jesus. I thought this might change if the man continued to live, but when I heard the news that he was in stable condition, part of me was relieved. My prayer is that someday down the road, I'd get to spend some time with the man who shot my father. Not to scream at him, not to yell at him, not to scold him, simply to tell him about Jesus.
18-year-old student. If you found yourself, if I found myself in a similar situation, would I want to scream, scold, judge, and bring justice? Or would I want to tell the person about my Jesus? And even with a transformed heart that I know the Lord has done work on me, this is where I lean, right? If we're honest. But Jesus says that's not where you can go. You've got to go here. Because blessed are the merciful, because they shall receive mercy. That I've got to care so much about somebody's soul that they get Jesus. See, justice will happen. See, we need to make sure we understand that. Justice will happen, but we leave justice up to God. We let God take care of justice because even in our own life, justice happens with our sin. That it's not just mercy that we get. Justice took place over our sin. It's just we didn't have to pay for the justice. That what Jesus said is the sin is the sin and the sin is an issue. So Jesus, in his mercy, came and took care of the justice issue and through justice justified us back to the Father. That's what Jesus did. So our life is not absent of justice. It was just paid for by Jesus Christ. And when we come to understand that, I understand the incredible, inexcusable debt load I have towards God that he freely forgives us of if we'll simply turn to him. And when we turn to him and recognize that mercy because we understand our spiritual plight, it's at that moment that we go, well, how can I not give mercy to somebody else? Because I understand what he forgave me of. And when we start to give mercy to somebody else that comes from a pure heart, here's what we actually see, is that as I'm given mercy rather than justice, I'm actually being more like God. I'm being a reflection of him. And as I give that mercy, I realize what it cost. And what it cost in the moment is me being willing to dish out the justice. But as I just give mercy, it helps me to recognize God a little bit clearer. And when that happens, you get to see God. Because again, blessed are the merciful, for they shall be shown mercy. And blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. So here's the question again. How good are you at giving mercy? And maybe I should add one more on to that. Well, how good are you at receiving mercy? Because the better I get at receiving mercy from God, and I allow that mercy to transform my heart, the better I will be at giving mercy. And then the better I am at giving mercy, the more I'll come to understand the mercy that I've received. So today, let's do that. And we're going to sing a song that'll be new to most of us. Rashid's going to lead us in it. And I'm going to encourage you maybe to do things a little different during our response time. Normally, we just kind of stand up. I'm going to ask you to kind of sit in it for a little while. And at any point you feel like standing, you worship the Lord however you need to. But I want us to sit and I want us to recognize the incredible gift of mercy Jesus gave us, because we should be dead in our sins. And maybe during this time that you're going to come up and take communion, you're just going to say, Jesus, thank you for the debt that you paid. Maybe you're going to go to the prayer corner, to a prayer counselor, and say, I just need to pray because there's some people I just need to give mercy to today. That I need to let go of it. And maybe for you, you're going to take a step of baptism today. That maybe you weren't planning on it or anything, but you're just like, I've got to go. I've got to come to the Father. I've got to come to Jesus, and I got to let him wash away my guilt and my debt. And there's going to be people standing right over by the baptistry. If you need to do that today, let's do it. Let's go to him and let's find the mercy that only is possible through Jesus. And when we receive that mercy, allow it to transform your heart and make you pure so that you can give it to somebody else. Jesus, we come before you and we thank you for paying the debt. And Jesus, I pray right now we'll receive it. We'll come to understand your mercy. And the inexcusable debt that we have, and give it to you.
I'm living proof of what the mercy of God can do. And if you knew me then, you believe me now. He turned my whole life upside down. Took the old and he made it new. That's just what the mercy of God can do. Now I'm alive to tell the story how I've overcome. It's his goodness and mercy and the power of his blood. I'm so glad that my freedom wasn't based on what I've done. It was his goodness and mercy and the power of the blood. Thought I deserved to be 6 feet beneath things I've said, the choices made that I regret. Oh, I would still be lost, but for the mercy of God. Now I'm alive to tell the story, how I've overcome. It's His goodness and mercy and the power of His blood. I'm so glad that my freedom wasn't based on what I've done, but the goodness and mercy and the power of His blood. Oh, there's so much power in His blood. Oh, was the cross meant for me, that my Savior carried? Now I've been made free by the mercy of God. Was the grave meant for me, where my sin lay buried? Now I stand redeemed by the mercy of God. Was the cross meant for me, that my Savior carried? Now I've been made free by the mercy of God. Was the grave meant for me, where my sin lay buried? Now I stand redeemed by the mercy of God. Now I'm alive to tell the story, how I've overcome. It's His goodness and mercy and the power of His blood. And I'm so glad that my freedom wasn't based on what I've done, but His goodness and mercy and the power of His blood. It was His goodness and mercy and the power of His blood. The goodness and mercy and the power of His blood. Oh, there's so much power in His blood, so much power. And what can wash away my sins? Nothing but the blood of Jesus. And what can make me whole again? Nothing but the blood of Jesus. And what can wash away my sins? Nothing but the blood of Jesus. What can make me whole again? Nothing but the blood of Jesus. Oh, there's power in the blood. There's power in the blood. There's so much power in the blood. There's power in the blood. There's so much power in the blood. There's so much power in the blood. So much power in the blood. And what can wash away my sins? Nothing but the blood of Jesus. And what can make me whole again? Nothing but the blood of Jesus. Now I'm alive to tell the Sing this with me, Christ be magnified. Singing, oh, Christ be magnified. Just let his praise arise. Christ be magnified in me. And oh, Christ be magnified from the altar of my life. Christ be magnified in me. And oh, Christ be magnified. And let his praise arise. Christ be magnified in me. And oh, Christ be magnified from the altar of my life. Christ be magnified in me. And oh, Christ be magnified. Just let his praise arise. Christ be magnified in me. And oh, Christ be magnified from the altar of my life. Christ be magnified in me. Where creation suddenly articulate with 1,000 tongues to lift one cry. Then from north to south and east to west, we'd hear Christ be magnified. Where the whole earth echoing his eminence, his name would burst from sea and sky. From rivers to the mountaintops, we hear Christ be magnified. Sing it all, Christ be magnified. Just let his praise arise. Christ be magnified in me. Oh, Christ be magnified from the altar of my life. Christ be magnified in me. Yeah. When every creature finds its inmost melody, and every human heart is native cry, oh, then in one enraptured hymn of praise, we'll hear Christ be magnified. Be magnified in us. Oh, we're singing, oh, Christ be magnified. Just let his praise arise. Christ be magnified in me. Oh, Christ be magnified from the altar of my life. Christ be magnified in me. I won't bow to idols. I stand strong and worship you. And if it puts me in the fire, I'll rejoice 'cause you're there too. I won't be fooled by feelings. I hold fast to what is true. 'Cause if the cross brings strength